Okay, this morning's job, an 18-foot Elite caravan. Going to put the tank on this side of the van with a checker plate cover over it. Then inside, I've just found the spot for the heater. Managed to get a perfect location under the bed and make it nice and tight. So just one box removed, and you can just see the hole there. If we put the heater over it, that will be how it will sit, and it will vent out down this way. So that's the plan. All looking pretty straightforward. Okay, hole drilled, and now we're just going to go out and put the heater together. And here's a tip for those who are a bit new to doing diesel heaters. On the mounting plate here, we have this little slot up the top. That is for putting your pump wire through. So the pump wire is this one. I always leave about a metre and a half to go through, depending where my hole is. That gives me plenty of pump wire to connect to the pump without having to cut it and rejoin it. So that little slot there for the pump wire. So this is how it comes out. This is what it looks like before we put the bolts in. So we're going to put the bolts in now and then connect up the exhaust and the air intake. I normally have all this done before the client arrives, but I have a few other things on today. 4 bolts in. Now they have washers and spring washers, which means they're going to hold tight against the vibrations. The next step is to put your fuel hose on, because that can be one of the hardest ones to get on if you put the air intake on first. And just make sure when you put it on, you put your bolts towards the inside, because we're going to have a collar around here. If you ever need to get it off, it's much easier if it's pointing towards the inside. One of the beauties of the AU Focus kit is that everything is in a bag. So you've got your collar in a bag, you've got your clamps and screws in a bag. I've emptied some of the bags now, but I'm just about to put the air filter on. That's the air filter bag. I'm going there now. But everything is in a bag and labelled, so you can't really stuff it up. And the next step is the air intake. So same size socket that you need for fuel. Screw it up tight in there. And I like to put the filter on at a time, and just, this is there loosely so I can clamp it to the chassis rail when I need to. And the final step in this one is getting this together, is putting on the exhaust nice and tight. Again, bolt towards the inside. Now I'm going to go in and vacuum up the mess from the drill and put in the collar and drop the unit through and screw it down. And another tip is use decent drills. I bought a stack of these 2mm drills from Temu, or what was it, eBay, and they're junk. So I've gone back to a decent quality drill, which gets through no worries, because the other ones are so blunt and they break so easily. So better to have a good drill that's going to last you a little while and break than have a cheap one that doesn't do the job and breaks anyway. There you go. So that's the collar. I like to put a bit of a bead of silicone on it from top as well as bottom, and those are the screws. We're going to use self-drilling screws to secure it to the base, which is plywood and steel, this one, a thin layer of steel on the underneath. So there you go, you can see that collar is in there, bit of silicone protruding from it making a seal, and we'll do the same underneath. There we are, all sealed down. Make sure when you're doing this, it's really worth having a long shaft 5/16 drill to get those screws into tight places. So before I start connecting anything, that's what we have. Screws coming through, drop out, and I'll probably get to seal that first up while it's easy without anything to work around, and then I'll start putting the various bits and pieces where they belong. Alright, all sealed up. So ideally with the exhaust, put the muffler on, you want it to go to the side or to the back. You don't need much longer than what you've been supplied with, because the exhaust air is going to disperse into the atmosphere. It's not going to be dangerous to anyone. So don't stress if you don't think you've got a long enough exhaust. Just find somewhere to connect it up to and let it do its work, point it away from, well, you're not going to be sitting outside probably if the heater's on, so you don't need to worry about it. And then the air intake the other way. Alright, there's the exhaust in place. Bolted it to the side of the chassis, pointing downwards towards the driver's side. All good. We're going to do the air intake now. Air intake secured, pump and filter now. Okay, given the fuel tank is going to be on this side of the caravan, I'm going to mount the pump just above the exhaust there. And if anyone's wondering if that's a problem, no, because the heat of the exhaust goes down. It only heats the exhaust itself. It will not impact the fuel pump whatsoever. Okay, there is the hose coming out of the heater, going around to the pump. Big key here is to make sure you keep this from that. It will burn through it, and when you put a clamp around it, put it around the nylon pipe and the split tubing rather than the black tubing. I've put it around there before and compressed it so tight that no fuel got through. So that's possible to do. Better to do it like this. Okay, there's the pump hung on the chassis there on an angle. I like to put the filter, you can see my filter right next to the pump, so that when I'm priming it I can just suck some fuel into the filter, connect it up, and then we're away. And you can see the fuel line running right back. Going to go out the front there, put the fuel tank on with the checker plate cover. You're putting a tank on. One of the things, if you're going to use a checker plate cover, just make sure you have enough room for your checker plate cover. I've just had to position this one so I can get the drill into the various holes that I'm going to need to finish it off. So position that first and then put your tank in afterwards. All right, we've got our holes approximately located, well, no, accurately located. Now I quite like riv nuts as a way of securing the tank to metal. We can use rivets or riv nuts. I'm going to use riv nuts today. This is the riv nut machine. Put the rivet in there. I'm going to give it a squeeze and I'll show you what it looks like in a moment. So that is what a riv nut does. It acts, it's got a thread inside it, and I'm going to screw the bolt into that thread to hold the fuel tank onto the checker plate. All right, and you can see those screws are threaded into the riv nuts. Now I'm going to put the cover on. You've got to leave the cap off first up to put the cover on because it won't fit. But we'll put the cover on, use the Tech screws to fix it to the checker plate, and then we're away. And there you have it. All fixed on. Just going to suck a bit of fuel through underneath, and then we'll drill a hole and run some cable to these batteries. Looking good. Okay, this is the electrical cable coming out of here. Batteries are right there. That gap between them is there. So I'm going to run it up this side of the battery, and I'm going to connect it on that way. Now here's a tip if you're taking the... So what I was going to say there is these are the leads coming from the battery through the fuse, red and black. When you connect your connectors on, use these ones. So that way there's no chance of use this one, of them touching together and blowing a fuse. So use the female connector coming out of the battery to join on. This makes sense. Pretty hard to get out those battery terminals, but got the wires connected, and I'm just going to run these ones up now and connect them up, put some tape around them just to hold them in place, and cable time. Okay, so we're up and running. Just got to drill a hole for the vent and locate the controller just over by the bed there. Okay, just giving it its first run. I'm going to tidy everything up, put the hole in for the vent, controller over by the bed there. That's the next stage of the job. Okay, that's the vent mounted and the ducting in tightened up. Let's see how our controller's running. You can see the little yellow flame there. It's telling us we have combustion, so definitely some warm air coming out. Anyway, I'm going to turn that off so I can mount the controller. Okay, here you can see the cable for the controller running along there. Got a little insert through there and coming out up here. I'm just going to put the controller on that piece of white covered. So what's really important when you're locating this plate here is that you can put it central and just feed the wires out, and you also want to make sure it doesn't obstruct. It's not obstructed by the door there. Oops, can't see that. So it'd be easy to put it too high. So you want to check where your door is before you put it on. So when you're putting this thing in, you want to make sure you don't have too much lead And you also want to make sure you don't thread your screws by putting them through that very thin ply and working them too hard. So that's in solid now. I'm going to connect it up and then we'll be away. And there we have it, finished product. Heater all ready to go with a cage over it to protect it. You can pack around that, and that's the end of another job. So the last bit to actually check is whether your remote control connects, otherwise you have to pair it. So if I hit this button, we hear start heating and we're away. I'm not going to leave that water container in front of the vent, but just wanted to make sure that all works.